Welcome to the first episode of Suitcase. Today we had the opportunity to have a conversation with Caleb Miller, which is working to become a missionary in South Africa. It was a really cool conversation. He talks about some of his struggles, his story along the way, and we're really excited to share this story with you. You ready to unpack it? Let's go. So I really do appreciate you being on the podcast with me today. If you will, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name's Caleb Miller, and I am a missionary associate to the country of South Africa.
Okay, what does that mean?
That means that I'm basically not good enough to have the title of missionary yet.
Awesome,
no,
I like that.
I'm going to intern under someone else.
That's really cool.
Charles and Tammy Hasselbring. They've been over there in the country of South Africa for over 25 years now.
Okay, why South Africa?
That is an excellent question. Why South Africa for me?
Yes.
That's a long story if you want to go ahead and get
I'm
into
ready.
that.
Let's jump straight into it, both feet.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of give you the whole story.
Okay.
Shorter version, long version. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
But I was called in the 4th grade to be a missionary and a pet shop owner.
Okay.
So I don't exactly know how the pet shop owner plays into it yet.
Right.
That's a kind of strange one.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll keep living life and see where God puts me. But I can tell you what animals were in my pet shop. And I was sketching. I went home and I told my parents that. And I started sketching animals that were going to be in my pet shop. And they were like giraffes and zebras and elephants, rhinos, all these safari exotic animals that you don't tend to see in a pet shop.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you can get a gerbil here or
a giraffe. Like
you can go to Caleb's pet shop.
Right. Yeah. You can just, yeah.
I like that.
That was that. But so we were kind of like growing up, we were kind of figuring out what that really was because you don't necessarily see those in pet shops.
Right.
So it's like we thought maybe a zoo or maybe just something completely random that we haven't thought of because that's how God tends to work. Right?
That's right.
But I go through life with that, knowing that, just growing up, being a PK. So just living life in the church. And then fast forward to high school, senior year, or not senior year, but about 2 years ago from now, I had my own lawn business.
Okay.
So I was a very successful lawn business.
That's awesome.
Grew it for a few years, and so that was it was very well built and very well community. I had that set. I was on track for the American dream. Like I really was.
Right.
I had a girlfriend that I thought I was going to marry for multiple years, and then I was looking at rings and houses because I could afford it because I was an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Very
Didn't
successful.
we all?
Right.
Yeah.
But that ended up not working. The Lord taught me a lot through that season, but I felt a transition coming. A lot of things in church was transitioning. That relationship was ending. Just a lot of things in my personal life was transitioning. And I was praying one night. I was like, Lord, if you think I'm ready, I see the transition. I see the change. If you're trying to say, hey, Caleb, I think you're ready for the missions field. I think that I'm ready. If you think that I'm ready, Lord, then get a missionary to ask me to come intern with them. So
cool.
A week after praying that, it was storm cleanup. So with Mobile, one of the many storms, it was a 12-hour day, and I had calluses on top of calluses and dirt and grained hands. And I was on my way home, and I was passing Center Point Assembly, if y'all know where that's at. But I was passing it on my way home back into Sims, or it was Satsuma at that time, but my mom calls me and is like, hey, there's this missions banquet at Center Point if you want to go. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking at it. When does it start? Like an hour from now. So
that's cool.
It was super cool, but I was exhausted and but I loved missions banquets. I've always loved them because I was called to be a missionary.
Right. So
I ended up going, and it was one of those moments like where I was actually putting my pants on while walking to the car.
Right.
Like it was one of the movie moments. It was probably the most movie-like I've ever felt. But I go to this missions banquet, and instead of 80 people, there were 13. terrible for the missionary. It was absolutely terrible for the missionary because he was going raising support to build churches.
Right.
But I get there and I end up getting to sit down with him just like we're sitting here right now. And I had this conversation with him, just like normal life conversation.
Right.
And by the end of the night, he looks at me and he says, "Caleb, let me see your hands." So I reach out my hands over the table, and remember they're dirt ingrained and calluses on top of calluses. And he calls his wife over and he says, "Tammy, come here. Look at this." She walks over, she looks at my hands, and she says, "Yeah, he'll do." And then they asked me to come intern with them.
Wow.
So that's how South Africa came to be South Africa for me.
That's a huge God moment.
Yeah, it really was. It really was.
That's crazy. So you said you're a PK. For the people that don't know, what is a PK?
A PK is a pastor's kid. I'm actually a double PK. So both of my parents were pastors.
Tell me a little bit about your family and like what it was like growing up in the ministry.
Okay, so my mom has been the children's pastor, or she was the children's pastor at Fountain of Life Church in Saraland for, 17, 18 years, I think, something like that.
Right.
My dad was the youth pastor for 4 or 5, somewhere around that. So I grew up in the church. Like it was... I'm pretty sure we spent more time in the church than we did at our house.
That's right.
Because I also went to school there, so it was like wake up, go to church,
go to
church, stay after, help get ready for children's church or youth or whatever it is, and then go back home on some nights.
That's awesome. That's really crazy.
And then I have 5 brothers as well, so throw that in the mix.
Now, so something I've seen with keeping up with you guys over the years, I've known your family for a really long time. I've actually served under your mom in some capacity for children's ministry. I did some evangelism stuff with your dad, kind of outside the church. I remember one time, like I was playing the drums and maybe doing a human video on the back of a 18-wheeler in Chickasaw, Yeah. So that was really cool. What's really cool to me is that your entire family does ministry. It's something that it's not a one-person spotlight show, but it's something that y'all do together. How has that impacted you growing up with that type of support and the love for Jesus?
Yeah, so it's been really incredible. I'm very thankful for the family I've grown up in and what everything that they've taught me. They've taught me that family and ministry, there's a place for each.
Okay.
So you can't go all out in ministry and then forget about your family. So you had to keep them. It's a very difficult thing that a lot of ministers deal with is that they forget about the family.
That seems very simple, but that's extremely deep. From being involved, I've been involved in ministry as well, and you feel like your number one calling is to God when your number one calling is to your family. Yep. And when you put your family where they're supposed to be, and have the relationship with God, I feel like those things start to just glue together, and the two become closer. That's really cool.
So they taught me that throughout it, and then just given whatever you do it to the best of your ability.
That's awesome.
So just being under my parents and under their leadership and under their ministry, those are the 2 things that I've learned.
That's really cool. So obviously you're going to Africa.
Yes.
Have you been to Africa yet?
Yes, I went for a month about 1.5 years ago.
Tell me about that experience.
Oh my goodness, I loved it. I got there, and at first I got off the plane and I walked out of the airport, and it looked like I was in Birmingham. Like
Really?
That blew me away.
No huts, no elephants, nothing.
None of that right outside the airport. The only difference were there were guards in the parking lots. Right. In every parking lot there was a guard holding a gun, and the roads were swapped. So you were driving on the opposite side. Okay. So that was really the only difference immediately that I saw. But then when you got out of the city and you got into the just outside of the city and you saw the huts and you saw the shacks and the villages and the animals, you were like, oh yeah, I'm in Africa now. It's like I'm in Africa.
You feel like you're on that ride at Disney World where you're on the safari and you just see all this stuff, but you kind of live there.
Right. That's it. You're right.
That's cool. What were you doing while you were there? Just visiting the area, missions trip?
So I went for a month, and it was kind of like a glorified missions trip. He needed help. It was kind of like a last minute thing because I was supposed to go for 3 months instead of that 1 month. Right. But he was going last minute because he was over here on the stateside raising funds, and he actually set everything up for me to go for that month. So then I went and I just helped him. He was stuck over here on the stateside, during COVID, so
Right.
he had to get everything at his house fixed and just set back up to live in.
Right.
So there was that, but then we also went and we built 2 tabernacles or 2 churches while we were there.
That's cool. So when you go over there, like for your mission, like what are you going to be doing? What's that going to look like for you?
I'll be pre-building the churches. So it's basically a pole barn to
Okay.
us is what it is. So we bend all the metal and we punch holes and we paint it and all of the behind the scenes stuff.
Right.
So we do that at his workshop at the back of his house, and then we'll drive to wherever the church is being built, and then teams from the States will come and help us build it. And we're not ever sure how much construction experience they have.
Okay.
So we make it as simple as possible, basically like putting together a puzzle. So the team will come and all they do is drill a screw into a hole.
Okay.
And then put 2 pieces together and do it again.
That's
and then
cool.
we build it that way, one piece
cool.
at a time.
That's really cool. What part of South Africa will you be in?
I'll live about 3.5, 4 hours above Johannesburg.
Okay.
But we will build churches in all of Southern Africa. So sometimes he'll drive 15, 16 hours away from where he lives to build a church.
Right. That's cool. So with this process, I'm assuming everything has not been seamless and easy.
No, not at all.
Tell me about some of the challenges that you've experienced in this process.
Well, first of all, it's not free.
Okay.
That's
Really?
right.
You don't get to go for free?
Right. So I had to raise support, monthly support, and it's been 2 years since I met Brother Charles.
Okay.
And it's been about a year since I've done the paperwork and everything, since I started the paperwork to get on this 2-year missions trip that I'm going on. So I've had to collect or build a team of supporters, of monthly supporters, and I've had a cash budget that I've had to have for my plane tickets and just life in general.
Right.
So that's probably the hardest thing. That's probably
Just been
the hardest
collecting
thing.
the funds?
Right, yeah. Because, no one's going to give you, it's very rare that someone's just going to come and give you your whole monthly support.
Correct.
And just completely support your entire trip.
Right.
So it takes a team, and it takes, just in everything, it takes a team. You can't do anything by yourself. You have to have a team to help you do whatever you're going to do.
And I've heard a lot of missionaries talk about before, like when you sow seeds into the kingdom and you sow seeds into missions, the seeds that the people are giving financially, you're able to go over there and actually plant.
Right.
So I think that's really cool. So now we put your Cash App right in here. I'm just kidding.
My link tree is, I gave Pastor Shane my link tree.
That's awesome. What are some of the things that you've done in order to be able to raise funds to go on this mission?
So I spoke at a lot of churches, mostly Assemblies of God churches.
Right.
But I did that, and I've spoken at the Saraland Chamber of Commerce.
Okay, that's cool.
Which was fun and exciting.
Right.
That was cool. It was cool. Just thing to be a part of.
Right.
This is the first time I've done a podcast, so that's exciting.
Right.
And then just a few other little things here and there, just showing up at every event that you can, and just being there for people. Like just having your face in front of people, it means a lot, and it does a lot.
That's cool.
And then I've also,
I was about to say, tell me about this giant giraffe that's on the table right now.
Right. I also created this coloring book, which has a super cool story about it. And I've sold a lot of these things. So I've always loved to sketch since I was little.
Right.
After I was called to be a pet shop owner, all the animals that I was sketching to be in that pet shop,
right,
were the zebras and giraffes, all those kind of safari-like animals, which is where I'll be, 30 minutes away from Kruger National Park,
right,
which is insane. But about 2 years ago, I started doing some professional work. Professional sketching is the best way I can call it, more detailed sketching. And I was showing my parents one of them, and my mom looked at me and was like, "Caleb, you need to make an African animals coloring book for your missions trip." So here we are, 8 months after her saying that.
That's a really good idea.
It was a God idea, because it funded a lot of my missions trip, and it opened up doors that I wouldn't have been able to open.
It's amazing whenever you follow him how these ideas start to flow, and if you're obedient, like the seeds that you need start to help take care of themselves.
Right.
And you've sketched all this stuff in here.
Yes, I hand sketched everything, and then all the fancy stuff on the sides, the fun information and the cover.
Right.
And the back cover was done by Elizabeth Dredden.
Okay. That's really cool, man. I'm really impressed with this, and I'm gonna have Shane like overlay this stuff so that people can see some of the stuff that you've done. I saw just a second ago, I seen like a lion in here. Are you scared of lions by chance?
I'm not. I'm more scared of the snakes. That's why there's none in here.
Okay. No snakes in the pet shop. You can get one at your local pet shop here in the States, but not in Africa.
No.
Not in Caleb's pet shop anyways.
That's right.
That's really cool. So one question that I ask a lot of people is, what drives you? Like, what drives you to go through all of these steps to get to the place that you're going?
Specifically, first of all, the call. I know I'm called to do this. Like, I know that since fourth grade, this is what I've lived my life to do. Lived my life to be a missionary, to go out and change lives.
That's cool.
But when I was over there in South Africa for that month, I was Brother Charles asked me to if I wanted to skip the 3 months and just come for 2 years. And that for me was a big ask, because I'd never been away from home for more than a month. So that was the longest time I've been away from home.
Yeah.
But I remember a few days after he asked that, I was praying and fasting about it, and I was swinging on a bench at this little motel, and you could hear all these wild animals off in the background. And I was with my parents. I was on the phone with my parents, and there was just this overwhelmingly large amount of peace. Like I can't even describe it. It was just so peaceful.
Right.
And I knew that I was supposed to go for the 2 years.
That's cool.
And that's held me strong, and I've held to that, because this 2-year process, it's had its ups and downs.
Yeah.
Like it's not been just an easy road.
That's really cool. If I'm someone that feels the same call that you have on your life, what advice would you give me?
Oh, please contact me. Please do it.
Do it.
The first step's always the hardest.
Right.
And whatever you're doing, the first step's always going to be the hardest.
That's really cool. What's some of the stuff that you've learned along this process?
Patience.
That's good.
Patience is that's a big one. And then just all the missionary journey before you can get on the field, there's so much that has to go into it beforehand. And I've learned a lot about that and different ways to help other missionaries. And we're working on different things to help other missionaries with this process.
That's really cool. If you don't mind me asking, how much did you have to raise before you could leave?
$3,500 in monthly support, and then $14,000 in cash.
That's awesome. If somebody is listening to the podcast today or watching the podcast today and they want to support you, how can they get involved with that?
So the easiest way would be to go to giving.ag.org and then search up my name, Caleb Miller, and then it'll pop up. And you can either give monthly, or you can give one-time gift through there.
Okay, that's awesome. Because I'm hoping that somebody feels it on their heart to be able to help you in this process. How can people get these color books?
They can go to my Facebook account.
Okay.
It's just Caleb Miller. And when you look at it, the little circle with the photo or whatever, it has a zebra on it. It's an orange picture. It was with a zebra that says Caleb Miller, Missionary Associate.
That's cool. And then there's a link on there that they can buy them, or they just message you?
Me.
Okay.
Yeah, let them message me, and then I can figure it out from there.
So we were talking off camera earlier about 6 words. If you could describe your goal in 6 words, what would it be?
To change the world through business.
That's
Just
really
real simple.
That's deep. That's simple but deep. I love it. Like it's really funny that you said that. Like you told me about that earlier. And like at a really young age, like I was called to ministry. And so like it's kind of one of those things where you know what it's like growing up in church, and then like everybody at the altar has the one word for you, and it's like everybody's called to ministry. Everybody, and it was like, okay, God, I'll go to ministry or whatever you want me to do, you know. So I like through different phases of my life, I've been involved with like church ministry, and I believe in the local church, and I believe that it's God's design. But marketplace ministry is something that I think that there's a calling on people's life for, but they have trouble with money over mission. Yeah. It's really important for the money, but they forget the mission. And so I say this a lot of times, and I got it out of a book. I didn't create this, but does it make money is not a bad question. It's just a really bad first question.
Ooh,
Does it serve people? That's the question. And so like here at A1 McDuffie, I'm a business owner here in the community, but if I make $1 million, awesome. But if I impact people, that's my number one concern. Like, would I do what I'm doing without money? Probably not. You know, I don't love trash that much, but it's not about trash. It's about the people.
Right.
So anyways, just being able to impact the culture in the area that I'm in is extremely important to me. And I know that has to be important to you with you being into missions. Tell me a little bit about the people that you're going to experience when you're there in the culture.
Yes. So another thing when I was there, I fell in love with the kids.
That's cool.
My mom was a kids pastor like my entire life.
Right.
So now they're U.S. missionaries to families and kids. Just kids has been a huge part of my life, kids ministry. So I love kids. There's a special place in my heart for kids. And when I was there, and it's probably my favorite photo I've ever been a part of, there's this one picture with me and I don't know, 20 kids, 30 kids, something like that. And we're all just smiling and we're all looking at the picture and the shacks in the background I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
The shack is in the background.
Right.
And right next to us is the tabernacle that we just built.
Okay.
Or the church that we just built. And to me, the sentimental value of that photo is so valuable because that was the first thing we did on that church building was a kids service.
Oh, that's cool.
And we were in the middle of nowhere and like 80 to 100 kids showed up. They just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And I was like, where are these kids coming from?
They're just out of nowhere.
It was just out of nowhere.
That's awesome. So in the mission, what are you going to be doing while you're there? You said that y'all are going to be building churches, like churches that haven't been there before, or what does that look like?
No, so we will come in and we'll build a pole barn where a church has already been planted. So that we work with other missionaries and the local pastors to plant other churches. So they're planting other churches, and then whenever that church body gets to a certain point, we will come in and we will build this tabernacle or the church building, a pole barn. And what that does is, to us, it's just like, oh, that's a building. But to them, it's the biggest thing in the village.
Oh, that's cool.
So our motto is shacks must fall, because right now the churches are meeting in these shacks and it's just a metal scrap building. Like that's all it is. And it's loud, it's hot, it's noisy. It's small and you can't really hear anything, and it's just not good for a church service. But not only that, but when they're in these villages, and when someone walks by and they look over and they see the shack, they look and they just keep walking and they say, how's your God any better than my God?
Right.
Your God hasn't provided any more for you than my God has provided for me.
That's cool.
But when we come in and we build this pole barn, it's the biggest thing in the village. So then instead of just walking by, they look over and they're like, oh, wow, your God came to the middle of nowhere for you.
That's cool.
And a lot of times that's true stories that have happened. And a lot of times they walk in and they get saved.
That's awesome, man. That's what it's all about.
That's it.
It's all about the people.
That's right.
What language do they speak there?
12 official languages.
12 official languages.
There are 12 official languages.
Wow.
English is one of them. So I won't necessarily have to learn another language.
Right.
But I really want to learn Zulu just to be able to, like, when I come back and I'm like speaking on a stage, I can go up and just start speaking in Zulu. Like,
That's
just
cool, man.
just
That's
to
gonna be
do
really
it.
Cool. Let's talk. Let's circle back around and let's talk about the goal. Unfold that for me. What does that look like to you?
So the goal for the Africa Tabernacle Evangelism as a whole is to build a church within walking distance of every African.
Okay.
So they can't. A lot of them don't have vehicles.
Right.
So a lot of them are just walking. If they go anywhere outside of their village, they're walking there.
Right.
So if we're trying to build churches in all of those villages.
Right. No, that's cool. Let's circle back to the business part where you were talking about like using business for missions. What does that look like?
I'm not exactly sure yet.
Okay.
I want to know more about that. Like that's something in my personal prayers because I that's something that's big on my heart. Like I thought about those 6 words to change the world through business, and it has business in it. I feel like I should be doing business, but I'm not yet. It's So I don't know yet.
No, I think that's important. I think that just understanding where you like having a vision, just because you know that it's part of what you're going to be doing doesn't necessarily always mean that you know.
Right.
But one thing that I think that, especially in business, I can talk a little bit more about that than being like full-time ministry, is the fact of every step that you take, like the Bible says that the steps of a righteous person is ordered by the Lord. Every step that you take, a lot of times you feel like you're taking it for no reason and it's in the wrong direction, but it always comes back to circle back around. I've seen that here. Like I've had random jobs to where me and my family were kind of in a bind, and I took a job working down at TA truck stop, and it was like working at a gas station, you know, changing some tires and oil. But whenever I become owner of the garbage business, I had to change tires. I had to change oil. So I was like, well, God, this was part of the plan.
Right.
Well, it went a little bit further. Now my shop manager was actually another technician that was there at the time.
Wow.
So it's kind of one of those things where don't ever take the steps that you have for granted. Take them, each one, learn from it, and allow the Lord to use you through those situations. And I think that you've already been doing that in your life. Your dad has a construction business, correct?
Yes.
A background in business, and you grew up doing that?
I did. I helped him with that for a little bit. And
So before we started the podcast, his dad fired me. But you know, we're just going to leave that there.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Tell me a little bit about that growing up, with being a carpenter's son.
Yeah. So he was doing that in conjunction with my mom doing the children's pastor. Being the children's pastor. So when I wasn't in the church, when we would leave, we might end up going somewhere and for us being kids, we can't necessarily do any of the work, but we might go around and pick up the trash and straighten up the job site. Yeah. So that was like, I've done that since I was a kid. Like that was just stuff we did. And then when I was old enough, and I needed work, I just started going with him. And then that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years while I've been itinerating. It costs money to go and travel. So I would go and work with him while doing that. And then,
and you're going to use some of those skills while you're over in South Africa.
I'm going to use a lot of those skills while I'm over there.
That's really cool.
Like you were talking about the different steps that line up to it, line up to God's journey. And it might not look to us like it's a big deal or anything. It's just this one little thing. But, like when I had the lawn business, I drove a trailer.
Okay.
Day after day after day.
Right.
And when I get over there, that's what I'll be doing is I'll be driving either a big truck or a trailer and carrying the tabernacles around.
That's really cool. If you want to throw a Bible story in here, if you look at David, and David's tending to the sheep, and he does a really good job at it. He has no idea that he's going to face Goliath. Right. But in his faithfulness, it led to his journey, which ended up leading to him being king. So, man, that's so cool. So be faithful. Be faithful in the small stuff, and God will allow doors to open for you to be able to walk into them.
Pretty sure the Bible says something about that.
I think it says something about that a little bit. So, do you have any stories that you would like to share?
Yes, I have two. So I'm going to throw this in there to kind of give them a teaser so that they'll stay in. But donkey cart, don't let me forget. Okay, but then before that is just something that I struggle just my entire life. Like growing up, I never really fit in. Okay. Like if you have a calling to be a pet shop owner, I don't think you should fit in.
You're not getting picked first in kickball.
Right.
I got you.
But I remember my dad telling me one time he was actually like he didn't tell me this then, but he told me later on in life. He was like, "Look, there was a little bit of a time there where we would walk into the school and you would be over off in the corner with the kids who never get hung out with instead of being out there with everyone else." Right. And we were kind of worried for a little bit there. That's what he was telling me. And I was like, "Oh, thanks, Dad." But it's just,
I appreciate it.
But real deal though, I feel like the Lord put me in that to where I see that and I kind of gravitate towards that because it's very easy. And I'm going to make a word here to be pharisaical. Okay. Where the Pharisees got too involved and too deep into the ministry that they forgot about the people.
Oh, wow.
So I feel like the Lord has always put that on me to where something that I struggle with is not struggle with, but something that I always want to focus is on the people that get overseen.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I always want to remember.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That is one of my prayers for my kids. When I drop them off at school in the mornings, I pray over them every day, and I remind them, like, to be Jesus to the people that's not cool.
Right.
Be Jesus to the people that don't want, it's easy to make fun of the people at the bottom to try to get to the top, but it's lonely at the top. But if the people that you have impact around on a daily basis will remember it for the rest of their lives.
Now, you can't forget about the ones up top either.
That's right. That's good.
They need to hear the word of God as well.
That's good.
But so do the ones at the bottom and everywhere in between.
Man, that's really deep. That's really good.
Yeah.
Tell me that donkey cart story.
The donkey cart. The donkey cart. So when I was there in South Africa, we were building a church, and I was up on the I don't even remember what they're called. Is it the rafters? Is that the?
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like I should know that going to build it. I'll learn it eventually.
That's right. Don't matter what they're called, just put them up there.
Just put them up there. But I was sitting up there and I was screwing the some little pieces on there or whatever, and the local pastor there was like, "Caleb, come here," and he whistled at me and he got my attention, and I climbed down the ladder and I walked over there, and he stopped these kids, and they were on a donkey cart. It was two donkeys pulling this truck bed. Like, that's what it was.
Really?
Yeah. And it was about four or five kids on it. And at that time, I didn't really realize what was going on. So I took a few pictures, and the pastor took pictures of me, and I sat on there with them, and I was doing all these different handshakes with them and all that. But what I did not realize at the time was that's what those kids did for a living. They drove that donkey cart to the nearest city, which is hours away, to get big jugs of water for the whole village.
Wow.
So that hurt me deep, because I was like, oh, snap. Like, they don't just have a water fountain or they don't have power or any of these things.
All the things that we take for granted.
Right. They didn't go to school. Instead of going to school, they drove this donkey cart for hours at a time, maybe even days. I have no clue, just to go get water for their village to have water.
Wow.
And it doesn't rain very often in those specific places.
How old were the kids?
Ooh. I mean, young, less than 10 for sure.
Wow. And so I'm assuming that's what they were doing to help, like, provide for their family.
Yeah, it wasn't like they didn't have a choice. They had to have water, and that's what they went and did.
That's crazy. That is insane. So what businesses do you want to do?
Yes. So there's a lot in my brain.
Okay.
There's so many up there. And I have them all wrote down because I forget things a lot. And
sounds familiar.
But one of them is coffee shops. I want to start coffee shops all over the world. But coffee shops, and there's a lot more. But the specific goal is to train missionaries how to run businesses, plant those businesses, and then train them how to work it. Then they have a source of income. Then they have a way into the community. And if it's a country where they can't go minister in, they can now minister because they have a business there.
Yeah, that marketplace ministry.
Right.
That's right.
Right. So it's way important, that marketplace ministry in the U.S.
Right.
And in the other countries, but it's important everywhere because, businesses, that's just part of life.
Right.
That's right. If you go into a grocery store, that's just part of life.
That's right.
If you're going to get a cup of coffee, I get a lot of coffee from a lot of places.
Talk to me about coffee.
I love coffee. I love coffee. But it's just, there was one, I don't remember where I was at or what I was doing, but I was thinking about businesses and just in the zone. Like I was probably sketching or something, and just all of a sudden it was like coffee shops. They're literally everywhere. Almost everyone on the face of the planet drinks some form of coffee, tea, or smoothie, whatever you can get at a coffee shop.
Right.
I mean, if you plant a coffee shop anywhere, people will go to it.
That's cool. That's right. No.
So then after that, I just started drinking coffee.
What's your favorite coffee?
Ooh, coffee. So I don't really drink it much at home because I'm more of I like to go to a coffee shop.
Right. You like to go out and drink it. Right.
Right. All right. And then sketch, get my work done, whatever it is. But favorite local coffee shop would probably be Mocha's in
Okay.
Sugarland.
Awesome.
Or Knucklebones Elixir Company in downtown. Yellowhammer's pretty good too.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I like Yellowhammer too. But my favorite one in all the ones that I've been to is it's called Xana's Coffee Shop or something like that. But it's in South Africa.
Okay.
Where I live. That's where it's the local
awesome.
coffee shop there.
I would love to connect you. I'd love to connect you with Jeff Roberts, the guy. I'm good friends with him. He actually just like blowing my phone up a second ago. And I'd love to connect you with him. And I think that he could be somebody. He's somebody that loves Jesus. He's got a heart for missions as well.
Oh, cool.
And I think that it'd be really cool to connect you guys. And if it doesn't go anywhere, you just get a cup of coffee at Yellowhammer.
right,
You know
that's
what I
right,
mean?
yeah.
But I think that he could potentially play a big part and be
Right.
part of the steps.
Right.
But, man, I really have enjoyed having you on here today. Thank you so much for sharing your heart. Is there anything that you want to say before we wrap this up?
Buy a coloring book.
Buy a coloring book. So get one of these coloring books. I want to say we want to support Caleb and what he's doing, and I encourage you to do that as well. We're buying some of these coloring books. Our company is actually going to make a donation to him to support him while he's overseas and doing God's work. And the seeds that you're planting, Shane said $5 million. But the seeds that you're planting into doing business with us is going to plant seeds into Caleb's ministry. I appreciate you sharing your story today. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed it, man.
Thanks for letting me.
Yes, sir.